Hey guys, time to get in on the action for the biggest moments in basketball with Prize Picks, America's #1 fantasy sports app. Just select 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projections, place your entry, and win up to 100 times your money. Right now, Prize Picks will match your first deposit of up to $100. Just download the Prize Picks app and use the code GET100. That's code GET100 on Prize Picks for a first deposit match of up to $100. Prize Picks. Pick more. Pick less. It's that easy. Hey guys, time to get in on the action for the biggest moments in basketball with Prize Picks, America's #1 fantasy sports app. Just select 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projections, place your entry, and win up to 100 times your money. Right now, Prize Picks will match your first deposit of up to $100. Just download the Prize Picks app and use the code GET100. That's code GET100 on Prize Picks for a first deposit match of up to $100. Prize Picks. Pick more. Pick less. It's that easy.
The following program are pre-recorded Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270.
Super Talk 1270. I'm Steve Bach along with Kevin Oberland at Dakota Pharmacy, Dakota Natural Health Center, downtown Bismarck's Corner Drugstore. And Kevin, is it me or are we a little earlier into allergy season this year?
I think every year it just seems to start a little earlier for people.
Well, not last year because it was winter until July. So, but spring and I think it's because of lack of snow cover. A lot of the grass allergies that may have been out there. Last year we dealt with a lot of snow mold, which people have allergies to. It's a type of mold.
Yep.
This year, just all that exposed grass and the weather it's been pretty nice for a winter, which means a lot of things don't get killed off. There's a lot of things still in the soil and the air. And it's just, I know more people that have been dealing with allergy issues early this year.
Yeah. And every year is different. And we see more people that exhibit symptoms of allergies that never have before. Even last year was a really strange year because of like you said, the snow mold and all the moisture, and we seem to have growth of things that were different. So different people that never experienced allergy symptoms were having some issues. Now we're into a new year, and you're right, it's a little different. So, and it's early, but we're starting to see a population of people show up looking for help because they have either an early onset of their seasonal allergies, or people that have never really suffered from allergies before are experiencing some of these things.
And how are these symptoms presenting themselves? Because I know a lot of people right now that are either like, I got this thing that's lingering. I'm like, is it allergies?
Right.
And maybe they haven't had allergies in the past, but you can develop allergies over time.
Oh, sure. Yep. So what happens in allergy symptoms is there's a couple phases. There is something called the sensitization phase. So if somebody's allergic to a medication, they typically don't react immediately. So if somebody's allergic to penicillin,
that'd be me.
They may take a dose of penicillin or a round of penicillin and be fine.
Well, and so I developed an allergy to penicillin high school years.
Yeah.
Because I was exposed to a lot of penicillin because grew up in the 70s. So
right.
Like,
everybody got it.
Everybody got it.
It's a miracle.
Here, have a shot, you know. Plus, I was a base baby up at Grand Forks Air Force Base, which they shot you with everything. So it's like sniffle, penicillin.
Yeah.
It's like, but I developed that later where I would take a penicillin or a amoxicillin and all of a sudden hives, and it was very low. But that it developed because I built it up in my system.
And people would get injections of penicillin.
Oh gosh, yeah.
If they were sick.
Mega doses back in the day.
And my little brother's a perfect example. He got a dose of a penicillin injection growing up at home. A while later, he was sick. He got another dose. We were at the dinner table, and he swelled up like a balloon. Couldn't breathe. My dad grabbed him. Luckily, we were close to the clinic, and at that time there was a doctor in the clinic. He got him into the clinic, and they gave him a shot of epinephrine and pulled him out of it. But he could have died. He had an anaphylactic reaction that closed off his airways, And he was through the sensitization phase from that first exposure, and now he's in the activation phase. So we develop things that are called specific immune globulins in that first phase, and then when you come along with that substance or pollen or whatever it might be, then you get into the activation phase and you have reactions.
So is there a precursor to the sensitization stage?
Oh, I think there might be, and that's really more.
Is there a trigger?
That might be more. It could be genetics. It might be more just, especially nowadays. We're exposed to so many different things. I like to explain allergies like your body reacts to everybody reacts to allergens. Whether or not it exhibits symptoms is patient specific. But that reaction, the immune globulin reaction, your body typically takes that and puts it in a barrel. And if it gets in the barrel, you don't have any problems. Well, when the barrel's full and there's no room for them, then we're going to have problems. So as we're exposed to more and more types of allergens and go through these sensitization and activation phase, that barrel just gets fuller and fuller and fuller. Sometimes age is part of the problem. But if we don't pull the plug on the bottom of the barrel with clean lifestyle and avoidance of some of these things, suddenly the barrel's full and we have symptoms.
Okay, walk us through the sensitization stage, because that's where people are exposed to something that's an allergen, and now your body either doesn't have the ability to manage the volume of that, or it could be a very trace amount that your body reacts to. So there's different aspects of that sensitization.
Sure. But it really means that your immune function is working, because you're developing the specific immunoglobulin. They call them IgE antibodies that target those allergens. That's a protective phase. But when there's an override of the IgE antibodies, or they're hypersensitized, then you get into the activation. So the repeated exposure increases the IgE antibodies, and the barrel's full, so there's no place for them to go. So they're very, very hyperactive when you get into that activation phase.
So when you have an allergy and a reaction, is it whatever you're allergic to itself, or is it your body's reaction to what was being introduced that you're allergic to, that you get this overreaction, and that's actually the symptoms of an allergy? Yeah,
I think, and it's probably a combination of both. But you know, and the problem with when you have different seasons, and you have the same pollens year after year, and somebody's developed the antibodies to that, they're going to have seasonal allergies because those antibodies stay active. They're like the soldiers at the border. They're sitting in their chairs waiting for the enemy. The enemy shows up and they stand up and they get active. But the soldiers stay there. So that's a protective phase for people, that their immune system is working. It's just that when it's overwrought, then we have a spillover of symptoms.
We're talking with Kevin Oberlander, Dakota Health, Dakota Natural Health Center, and Dakota Pharmacy, downtown Bismarck's Corner Drugstore, talking about allergies. A lot of people suffering allergies a little bit earlier or for a longer season this year. We're going to get more into that when we come back. This is Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270.
Super Talk.
Hey guys, time to get in on the action for the biggest moments in basketball with Prize Picks, America's #1 fantasy sports app. Just select 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projections, place your entry, and win up to 100 times your money. Right now, Prize Picks will match your first deposit of up to $100. Just download the Prize Picks app and use the code GET100. That's code GET100 on Prize Picks for a first deposit match of up to $100. Prize Picks. Pick more. Pick less. It's that easy.
Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270.
Super Talk 1270. I'm Steve Black, along with Kevin Oberlander, Dakota Pharmacy, Dakota Natural Health Center, downtown Bismarck's Corner Drugstore. We're talking about allergies this morning. And, okay, activation stage. So we talked about the sensitization stage, now the activation stage. This is when your body kicks in and your immune system's working, or is it overworking, which I guess is kind of a question.
Yeah, it is. So, and the activation phase, I think, as we get older, or if there's been early exposure in our lifestyle, that activation phase can get worse and worse. So, and sometimes it will reduce because we don't have the level of exposure that we may have had previously. But when you're clinically allergic to something like penicillin, you're gonna be in trouble if you ever ingest it. I knew a pharmacist years ago. He's since gone. I was a young guy just out of school, and the pharmacy he worked at was just down the street in downtown Bismarck. And I went in one time. We used to borrow stuff back and forth, and he had a sheet of paper on the counter, and he was counting some tablets off of this sheet of paper. And we have counting trays. You count them into the end, and you pour them into the bottle. And I said, Dick, what are you doing? He goes, I'm counting penicillin tablets. And he said, I counted some penicillin tablets years ago on a counting tray and didn't clean it. And the next tablets that I counted picked up some of the dust from the penicillin tablets. And that person that got that prescription was allergic to penicillin. And they got very sick.
Just that little bit of a trace.
Just that little bit of a trace. So when you're allergic to something like that, to that degree, and you have all these IgE antibodies, a tiny exposure can be deathly. I worked with a family. One of their boys was gluten sensitive, and it's almost like that is an allergy reaction. But the sensitivities of things like foods can be critical. Like people are allergic to nuts, and you've probably been on a plane and they say we have somebody with a peanut allergy, so you can't.
Yeah, most people on the plane are like, whatever.
Oh yeah.
We're way back here, whatever.
But it, the air moves around in the cabin, and if there's some peanut exposure to an individual, they can get violently ill. But this young guy, he was really he had a gluten sensitivity to the point that it was an anaphylactic reaction. Wow. He had his own toaster. He had his own plates. The family finally succumbed to the idea that they all went gluten-free. There was no gluten-based foods in their house, and they learned to live like that because early on they toasted his gluten-free bread in their regular toaster, and he got really sick to the point where they had to use an EpiPen on him to bring him out of that reaction. So that active phase can be really severe, and it can happen really quick. So people need to be aware, and most people that are there, they know they're carrying their EpiPen. Epinephrine brings them out of a reaction, so they understand that need. A bee sting. Somebody could get stung by a bee, and they're going to be fine until they get stung again, and then they know that they need that help.
So, in a lot of cases, bee sting's a great example because once it gets introduced, and then now it's lying under the surface, and then once it gets reintroduced again, you get that trigger. It's weird. My grandfather stung hundreds of times. My mom, she's in that boat.
Yeah.
Got stung, and then next time she got stung, she is deathly allergic to bee stings. I'm fine. I've been stung hundreds of times.
Yeah.
You just don't know, but there's a genetic component to a lot of this as well.
There really is. Bee stings is interesting to me because I worked as a young kid. I worked for a beekeeper growing up in Mott. And I did that for a couple summers. And when we'd start, you're always going to get stung. And when we'd start going out and gathering the honey boxes, when I would get stung, I would swell up pretty good. But it wasn't long that I didn't react at all.
Yeah. So you went the other way.
I went the other way. So that means there's a lot of room in my barrel for these IgE immune globulins. So the activation phase really doesn't happen. people will tell you that early in the mosquito season, I swell up like crazy, and then suddenly I just don't anymore. That's because your immune function is doing a great job, because that's typically a toxin to your body. So if your immune function is working properly, you have less reaction phase. When there's an issue, that reaction phase, like we talked, activation phase can be severe. Yep.
Itch, swelling, mosquito bites are dreadful for them.
Right. So why are some people more prone to allergies? Genetic. There's a genetic susceptibility, and genetics can play a significant role. So people with family history of allergies, that may be passed on, and it may not. And sometimes the genetics and the formation of the antibodies is a protective phase. So the genetics sometimes it helps, but in some cases it can be really critical. Another reason is early life exposures. So people kids in the development phase during infancy and early childhood, the exposures can influence the development of allergies later in life. Some of the interesting factors are prenatal exposure to allergens. The mode of delivery, was the baby born by C-section or vaginal birth? There's a lot of immune function that happens and activation for a child at birth when they're birthed naturally through the vaginal canal, and without that, they sometimes, their immune function loses that initial jump start to their immune function. Breastfeeding. Children who are breastfed typically have better immune function.
Because a lot of that immunity is passed on through the mother.
Right. And the colostrum and all of the immune function that naturally comes through that. Environmental allergy exposure. So the continued exposure to allergens, especially early in life, can lead to the development and persistence of allergies. So people living in urban areas where there's heavy pollution, maybe living in the inner city in, large urban housing, a lot of confinement, a lot of allergy exposure, a lot of different people doing different things, cooking different foods, smoking.
Well, I know the environmental side firsthand because I used to live in Portland, Oregon, Pacific Northwest. I can't live there.
Yeah.
Because of all the moisture and the mold and the mildew and all the environmental issues that are out there because it's a damp climate.
Right.
I would have to shower 2, 3, 4 times a day just to try to clean out my. I had the worst sinus issues out there, and it was all allergies.
Oh.
And I'm typically I don't have allergies.
Sometimes people move from where they're living to a different climate because they just can't handle the allergen exposure of where they're living.
North Dakota, typically a dry climate and a dry winter. I'm fine here. Yeah. It's like, that's why this is home.
We were working with a lady. She was from the coal mining area, and she was sick all the time. And she saw an allergist, and I think it was in Minneapolis. And he suggested that they move. And they did. They left the state, and she stopped one time years later, and she said, I was fine. They thought it may have been the coal dust that was part of her problems because her husband worked in the mines, and the constant exposure to the coal dust. She
bringing it home on your clothes.
Yep, she was exposed to it every day, and she reacted all the time.
We're talking with Kevin Oberlander, Dakota Pharmacy, Dakota Natural Health Center, downtown Bismarck's Corner Drugstore, discussing allergies. This is Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270.
Talk of the Town.
Hey guys, time to get in on the action for the biggest moments in basketball with Prize Picks, America's #1 fantasy sports app. Just select 2 or more players. Pick more or less on their projections, place your entry, and win up to 100 times your money. Right now, Prize Picks will match your first deposit of up to $100. Just download the Prize Picks app and use the code GET100. That's code GET100 on Prize Picks for a first deposit match of up to $100. Prize Picks. Pick more. Pick less. It's that easy.
Talkin', weekday mornings starting at 9 on Super Talk 1270 and the free Super Talk 1270 mobile app. Welcome back to Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270.
Super Talk 1270, you're tuned to Talk of the Town. I'm Steve Bach along with Kevin Oberlander, Dakota Pharmacy, Dakota Natural Health Center, downtown Bismarck's Corner Drug Store. And we're talking about allergies. Is it safe to say that there's a lot of different allergies out there, and it's not really easy to drop them into categories? Because I'm thinking some environmental. I'm thinking just within environmental, there's in the house, there's people with dust allergies, different microbes. Then you go outside, and there's pollen and grass and leaves and mold and mildew, and so a lot of those are different environmental. There's food allergies. There's where do you drop? Because diagnosing is part of figuring out what channel.
Right.
I guess that's probably the best way to describe it. What channel do your allergies fall into? Yeah,
and sometimes we think of allergies typically as trees and leaves and grass and food.
Pollen and.
But I think there's a lot of different things that will activate our immune globulins that we may not even be aware of. And I'll come back to the barrel. So if there's something that you're exposed to, whether it's a laundry soap, sometimes people come in with skin problems and it's like an allergic reaction. Well, what have they been exposed to? You talk to an allergist, he's going to ask you questions like, have you changed your soap? Have you changed your laundry? You know, what's different?
Well, that's actually fairly common because it's the dyes and the different chemicals in laundry detergent that people build up a susceptibility to. I've got sensitive skin, so I don't even go there. It's like I always use the fragrance-free everything, and especially on laundry detergent because I don't even want to go down that road.
You know, we typically think, like I said, allergies are pollens or foods, but dyes is a great example. In our pharmacy world, people are sometimes allergic to the dye that's in the tablet of the medication that they're taking.
Wow.
So, you know, red dye number 1 is very common, and there are people out there they'll ask does that tablet have red dye number 1 or yellow number 2 or whatever the case might be. In the compounding lab, we actually compound some medications for people who are allergic to whatever the filler is in the medication that they need. And sometimes there's a lot of different stuff in there. So we get the pure drug, the raw material, and use a hypoallergenic base. So there's only one other ingredient in there.
Well, and quite often, it doesn't matter what the product is, whether it's a food product or a detergent or a medication, it's the filler that a lot of people are allergic to. It's not necessarily the drug item.
Right.
It's the filler.
Yes.
And I do have to ask, though, because you mentioned dyes. Methylene blue. Have you ever known anybody to be allergic to methylene blue? Because we talk about that a lot.
I haven't seen it.
I don't recall that ever coming up as
but I would guess the potential is there.
Potential's there, probably.
Sure. But that's all. So people will go through a diagnostic phase with, say, quote unquote, an allergist, where they're going to do skin prick testing and see what kind of reaction they get to certain things. And when they do these, they're exposing them to all sorts of stuff. So they're looking for some type of a skin reaction to some type of exposure. And then they can develop the injectable allergy serums that stimulates their immune function so that repeated exposure decreases the activation reaction that they get. I think allergy serum injection is great science. It's I worked with Dr. James Larson for a long time before he retired and now has passed away. He was almost like a mad scientist. We were making his allergy serums at the time, and he would send over an order with the note that I changed this concentration of this ingredient and added this because I'm finding that the patient has entered a different phase of their allergy reaction. And when he was right, these people would feel fabulous because their immune function was so much better.
And you bring up another point of that, too, because allergies change over time.
Mm-hmm.
They can increase, decrease. You don't know which direction they're going to go, like you with bee stings or mosquito bites. And some people go the other way, but it takes time to build that up, fill that barrel, if you will.
Right.
By the way, anybody who's ever gone through the allergy, somebody who hates needles, it's the most hateful thing.
It is.
And I've been through that because I developed the penicillin allergy, and then and this was a great example of how body systems work together.
Right.
I developed an allergy to fluoride.
Huh.
So brushing my teeth, I would break out. So I had to use non-fluoride toothpaste for a while, but because it was puberty.
Yeah.
When I was going through your metabolic, everything changes.
Right.
And so that change, now I'm fine with fluoride, but I developed a fluoride allergy for a while because my body system had changed.
It's just interesting you talk about puberty and the hormone changes. As we age and we go through hormone changes, people sometimes start to exhibit symptoms of allergies. And part of that is our adrenal glands are they're so necessary for the production of cortisol. So if you're allergic to something and a seasonal allergy and your nose is inflamed and running, you're going to get a nasal spray that really helps. That's a steroid. So fluconazole is a typical steroid nasal spray that's used a lot. It's called Flonase. If your body...
it's OTC now, too.
Yeah. If your body's adrenal function is suffering and you're not making your own cortisol, you're going to be much more exposed to symptoms of allergic reaction because you don't have the anti-inflammatory effect of your own body's cortisol. So if an allergen comes in and it challenges your system and you destabilize mast cells and you put off histamine, your body should, one of the things it does is the adrenal glands will put out cortisol to take down that inflammation. People with severe adrenal fatigue functions, they tend to be the person that stops going to church because they can't tolerate the perfumes and the colognes.
And I'm really sensitive.
Yeah, they get super sensitive to just the environment around them. And it's not anything specific. It's almost everything because they just don't have the natural ability to deflame.
I read a study back when I was in college, long time ago, and they were equating, and I found it interesting at the time because, what I had gone through with the penicillin and the fluoride, and I was kind of putting the two and two together. And in the study, they were thinking that for most people who develop an allergy over time, there's a couple windows of hyperexposure, and one was puberty. And then the other was menopause or menopause. So your mid-50s, early 50s, the thesis was that's when people are the most apt to have a change in their allergy classification or how they react to that.
Right. Dr. James Wilson's written a book called Adrenal Fatigue, the 21st Century Syndrome. But he talks a lot in there about constant exposure to something that you're actually allergic to that you may not react to challenges your adrenal function. But hormone imbalance or the lack of certain hormones also challenges that. So you're right. People enter a different life stage and suddenly they exhibit allergy conditions and will try to treat their adrenal fatigue with supplements or adrenal activators, and oftentimes it helps.
We're talking with Kevin Oberland at Dakota Pharmacy, Dakota Natural Health Center, downtown Bismarck's Corner Drug Store, talking about allergies. This is Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270.
Super Talk.
Hey guys, time to get in on the action for the biggest moments in basketball with Prize Picks, America's #1 fantasy sports app. Just select 2 or more players. Pick more or less on their projections, place your entry, and win up to 100 times your money. Right now, Prize Picks will match your first deposit of up to $100. Just download the Prize Picks app and use the code GET100. That's code GET100 on Prize Picks for a first deposit match of up to $100. Prize Picks. Pick more. Pick less. It's that easy.
Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270.
Super Talk 1270, you're tuned to Talk of the Town. I'm Steve Bakken with Kevin Oberlein at Dakota Pharmacy, Dakota Natural Health Center, downtown Bismarck's Corner Drug Store. We're talking allergies. And so a lot of people, exposure builds your immunity. A lot of people, exposure triggers allergies or reactions. The mast cells are really the determining factor there. So why do people go that way and some people go that way? And
so mast cells are they're a huge part of our immune function, and when they're unstable, they release things like histamine. So we use antihistamines to treat our allergy symptoms. They release cytokines, which are inflammatory. Mast cell destabilization was a huge thing during COVID. The virus seemed to really cause a huge mast cell instability, which was leading to all the lung problems in some of our COVID-infected patients. So your mast cell health is important. And the mast cells they'll become more unstable the more they're exposed to allergens. So that kind of brings us back to the lifestyle. Chronic exposure to high gluten foods, sometimes that causes these mast cells, they just become unstable. So a little bit of exposure causes the release of the inflammatory and the histamine reaction. So, and a lot of the medications, and one that's familiar to the public is called Singulair, or the generic now is Montelukast. They work by stabilizing the mast cells. So if somebody's got, say they're diagnosed as an asthmatic, but it's more an underlying allergy problem, these drugs work very well.
Something triggers the asthma attack.
Right. Something triggers it, and that starts at the mast cell level. So mast cell stabilization is important. And some of the things that we use in the nutrition world, that's what they do. Quercetin's a great example. It's a flavonoid found in foods like onions and apples. But studies suggest that quercetin may have anti-inflammatory and antihistamine research, and it really comes back to the mast cell stabilization.
Okay, another question, because I read this quite a while back as well. And you know how I prescribe to things in nature, everything needs to be in equilibrium, some balance, hence the colorful diet, the balanced diet. A lot of the foods that are out there are support for the systems to prevent allergies. Yeah.
Yep. So one of the things that I read is if you live in an area and you have some allergy, more of the the pollens and the exposures, you want to believe that consuming locally produced honey is going to have some of. It's like getting an allergy shot because the honey is infused with some of the pollens that are
pollen. Yeah, and because I prescribe to bee pollen. I'm a big believer in honey and the what honey can do.
Right,
and I take a bee pollen. But I try to source that locally.
Right,
because we've got that opportunity in North Dakota.
We do. Another thing that I think, and we talk about it all the time, is the health of your microbiome, the health of the bacteria, the beneficial bacteria in our bodies. When there's a dysbiosis where we're carrying around more of the bad guys than the good guys, that can lead to people having more allergy problems because the good guys are really building barriers. The good probiotics that we subscribe to, they build a mucus lining in the GI tract so if we're ingesting things, breathing things in that get into our GI tract, it's like a mucus lining on the inside of our GI system that holds those things back. So it's a really, really good filter system.
Well, we talk about biofilm. It's kind of biofilm on a different scale, but this is a good one.
Exactly. Yeah, microbiome. These are good biofilms. They're colonies of good bacteria that build this mucus lining. A good explanation is like a really, really good screen door with a fine mesh keeps the bugs out. Well, you throw a softball through that and you have what we call leaky gut. All those allergens can really get into your system, and that it fills up the barrel a lot quicker, so we're more susceptible.
So what are some of the common treatments or remedies for a lot of different allergies?
So antihistamines comes to mind, and there's just so many of them now over the counter, and they're non-drowsy. Your nasal sprays that we talked about. Sometimes in severe situation we use, prednisone or oral corticosteroids. The mast cell stabilizers that we talked about, immune modulators. There are drugs out there that really modulate your immune system so that it's stronger. And then, there's the epinephrine, the EpiPens, the auto injectors that are critical because they quickly reverse. Other things that people can do are things like nasal irrigation. We're breathing in our nasal passage is a filter, but when it's overexposed or we have an overreaction, using nasal irrigation to flush those out.
Okay, my wife finds this disgusting.
Yeah.
But every doctor, every allergist, everybody I've ever talked to is make sure you clean your sinuses out in the shower.
Yeah. Nice
hot shower and clean your sinuses out.
Yep.
Sorry, honey, but the doctor said so.
Yeah. And we have some favorite products. My favorite natural allergy product is in our brand. It's called Allernac. It's quercetin, it's N-acetylcysteine, it's stinging nettles. It's things that really help in multiple areas. People that take it learn how to use it. Some people take it all the time because they just have this chronic underlying allergy problem. We're starting to see it move now because people start early before the seasonal allergy season kicks in because they know if they get into May and June, they're in trouble.
Or this year, March or April.
Yeah. So those are things that we can help with. There's a video on our YouTube channel that talks about some of the things.
KLXX AM, Mandan, Bismarck, a Town Square media station, broadcasting from the View Community Credit Union Studio.
Hey guys, time to get in on the action for the biggest moments in basketball with Prize Picks, America's #1 fantasy sports app. Just select 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projections, place your entry, and win up to 100 times your money. Right now, Prize Picks will match your first deposit of up to $100. Just download the Prize Picks app and use the code GET100. That's code GET100 on Prize Picks for a first deposit match of up to $100. Prize Picks. Pick more. Pick less. It's that easy.
Without apology, The Regular Joe Show with Joe Gigante. Weekday evenings at 9 on Super Talk 1270 and the free Super Talk 1270 mobile app.
Portions of the following program are pre-recorded.
Welcome back to Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270.
Super Talk 1270, time to check in with Joe Sheehan over at Benchmark Mortgage. He is your mortgage planner. Give him a call at 701-400-3926. Joe, okay, let's start with the numbers, but we've got so much to talk about right now.
Yeah, this has been a really big week for mortgage interest rates as the Fed members are speaking, so we're getting a lot of noise from the Fed members. We've got jobs reports, the ISM index, all these things, and so this is really, and we're really watching the 10-year Treasury. The key line of support is 4.35. If the 10-year Treasury moves much beyond 4.35, expect us to go back into those mid-7s, high-7 interest rates again. And, this is, and we even had Powell speak. We had a lot of Fed talk. So where we at coming into Thursday? Well, here's where we're at. Right away this morning, all week we've had 3 different Fed members come out and talk about, three rate cuts, probably 3 rate cuts. Well, so the Atlanta Fed Bostic comes out this morning on Squawk Box and says, I'm thinking maybe 1. Maybe.
Well, okay, so explain that to the listeners, because they're like, okay, well, when we talk about the Fed, who are we talking about? Because there's different Feds, and it depends on which city and banking, and there's multiples. There's the Fed, and then there's the different Feds.
Yeah, the Federal Reserve is there's members of the Federal Reserve Board, right? It's a board, and Powell is the chairman. And when we talk about the Fed, we typically talk about the chairman, who in this case is Powell, because he's typically the spokesperson, right? But they do vote. There's a vote that happens on the board. And, of course, the Fed chair has a lot of persuasive power, of course, has any tie-breaking vote power and all that kind of stuff. But, so, you have presidents, you have Federal Reserve banks in New York, Minneapolis, Atlanta, Dallas, for example. And these board members all have a voice about what we should do with the economy. And so we've had 3 different Fed members come out this week, and that was kind of echoing what Powell had said. Maybe we'll see 3 rate cuts. But then Bostic comes out today and goes, this economy is good. And the question that came to him from the interviewer was, is this economy ramping up? Is inflation ramping up again? And his opinion was that it was not. He just felt that because we expected the economy to slow, it felt like we were ramping up. But what really we have is a stable, strong economy. And but he said, you've heard me saying this now for almost a month. Why would the Fed cut interest rates?
Why would they?
Why would you?
There's no reason right now.
There's absolutely zero reason to cut interest rates. And so coming into that, what do we get right away? Well, we get the ADP private payrolls. Well, 148,000 new jobs expected on the ADP private payrolls. What did we get? 184. And February's number was revised from 140 to 155. The job market's still hot, folks. I mean, and what is a key driver to inflation right now? It's consumer spending. And consumer spending is driven by, jobs. Now, we did get some positive news out of the ISM service index, and what is that? Well, that's what are we paying for services. Services, and what are the typical services you have out there, and what are we paying for services versus goods? And the service index came in at 51.4 versus the 52.8. That did help all rates from going up a little bit today. But then, Powell comes out around noon today, and he starts talking, and his quote is, on inflation, it is too soon to say whether the recent readings represent more than just a bump. So he's trying to be optimistic of saying these really hot positive numbers don't mean inflation is going up. They may just be a bump while inflation is still cooling. But he's not saying, hey, folks, there's nothing to worry about. And, and I always tell you that this economy to me represents a lot of what things looked like in the 70s, remember?
Right.
And I always said that, one of the things that I hesitated was the Fed pausing before they had clearly beat inflation, because Volcker did that.
But you know what the difference is? You know what the difference is, though, right? Between now and the 70s is we don't have all those cool TV shows like The $6 Million Man and Dukes of Hazzard on. That's the difference.
But flared bottoms are canceled back.
All right, I'll give you that one. They are back. Okay. Sorry, I had to go there.
Yeah, and I'm going to go with my indicator. I want to find out what the ratio of the flare on a pant is to inflation.
Oh.
Because I'm just going to look for that. If the bottom of pants start to flare more and more, I'm just going to start expecting higher inflation.
That might be an accurate indicator. Hey, it's as good as anything else, right?
One of my things is people always say, well, why do you always wear short sleeve shirts? You always wear short sleeve shirts. Well, my standard answer is, well, when I can afford the rest of the sleeves, I'm going to buy them. And but really it's because I'm always hot. But anyway, so we're seeing a lot of there's a lot, and of course we have another jobs report coming out this week, the JOLTS report, and so we're going to see more. And if that comes out hotter than expected, we could probably see rates struggle. And where do we have rates coming into today right now? Well, the 30-year fixed rate, according to Mortgage News Daily, average rate being locked across the country right now is about 7%. So not terrible in lieu of what we've seen, not great in terms of what we've seen, but rates do have a lot of pressure to, and this is kind of a critical week. And right now, we've had a lot of news that should have pushed rates up, and rates have survived it. Now, oil was higher today, too. Oil is also something that can push interest rates up because it's inflationary. And so we see oil climbing, we see all these other things happening. We could see rates going up, but it hasn't. But rates really kind of stayed steady by the end of the day. The 10-year Treasury back down to 4.35, that critical indicator. And now the question is, well, why aren't rates kind of starting to skyrocket with this volatile news about inflation, hot jobs market? And I'll be honest with you, I think what might be saving us is that the stock market's struggling a little bit.
Okay.
And
we're up against a break. When we come back, I have a couple questions, and then I want to get into the stock market side of that as well. This is Talk of the Town. We're talking with Joe Sheehan. He is your mortgage planner over at Benchmark Mortgage. Give him a call at 701-400-3926. This is Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270.
Super Talk.
Hey guys, time to get in on the action for the biggest moments in basketball with Prize Picks, America's #1 fantasy sports app. Just select 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projections, place your entry, and win up to 100 times your money. Right now, Prize Picks will match your first deposit of up to $100. Just download the Prize Picks app and use the code GET100. That's code GET100 on Prize Picks for a first deposit match of up to $100. Prize Picks. Pick more. Pick less. It's that easy.
Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270.
Super Talk 1270, your tune to Talk of the Town. I'm Steve Bach along with Joe Sheehan. He's your mortgage planner over at Benchmark Mortgage. 701-400-3926. Give him a call. You need a plan. Okay, so you talked about oil and the price of oil going up. Well, there's an event that may or may not happen that could drive oil even higher, and we're seeing gas prices go up now. But a lot of talk this week that Iran might bomb or attack Israel. Instability in the Middle East, given that we're not energy secure in this country like we used to be, that could have a big effect, couldn't it?
Yeah, I can feel the flare on the bell bottoms growing. It resembles a lot of when.
Yeah,
the 1970s, right? I mean, I think that is definitely something we're going to need to watch closer. You have instability, you have that growing, and then you have the Middle East and price of oil going up, all pressure on interest rates. But I think what's helping mortgage rates right now is the Dow was down again today,
right?
And I think in a real traditional move, investors are buying into the idea rates are higher for longer, and when the stock market doesn't look healthy, they're transferring that money over to securities like the 30-year fixed rate mortgage, the 10-year Treasury, for safety, and typically in a normal healthy market, bonds and stocks do that dance. You fly out of risk and into safety, and you fly out of safety into risk for gain, and so. We haven't seen that in a long time. We haven't seen them do that normal dance back and forth. And so that may be another good sign that the economy is straightening out. I don't know. Okay,
so with the stock market, a little instability, that's kind of helping that. But the other piece of that, too, is because you mentioned the bonds and the risk. And when is the Fed going to start dumping some of those bonds? Because I think there's a segment of people that are kind of waiting for that market and that shoe to drop.
Yeah, the quantitative tightening certainly has an opportunity to happen any time. And I guess what we would hope is we would hope that we'd start seeing that when we also see the rate cuts, right? That if these rate cuts ever come, I think that's what the Fed's waiting for, is when I actually reduce rates, we'll start to try to ease some of the quantitative tightening and pushing those bonds into the market.
But couldn't that drive inflation as well?
That looks like that could be off. We could be well into next year.
So how long is the Fed going to hold on to these bonds? Because, again, that could drive a little bit of inflation also.
Well, I would just go with what the Fed keeps saying. Higher for longer. All
right.
Don't fight the Fed.
Yeah, don't fight the Fed. Well, okay, but we do have different mechanisms within the government that is fighting the Fed. So we've talked about this ad nauseum, that nobody's on the same page, whether it's Congress, whether it is the White House or the Fed. The mixed messages, that's not helping either. So at what point are we too close to a presidential election now? Because I keep coming back to that you're going to see any kind of a change.
Yeah, I don't. You're not. The presidential election aside, I think the Fed is literally just monitoring inflation, and you're not going to see any. And maybe that's part of the reason for not doing any quantitative tightening. But I think most of this doesn't have anything to do with the election. This just has to do with watching inflation. But the Fed is going to try to make conservative moves. They're not going to want to be seen as being manipulated by any election, and so they don't want anything to either. They want a nice even. They want the soft landing to continue. Let's be clear. Powell wants a legacy of everybody forgetting about what he did during COVID. He wants Powell.
Well, a lot of people want people to forget.
The Fed delivered the soft landing. Now, he doesn't want anybody to remember that it was his bad takeoff that caused it, but he wants to be remembered as the soft landing.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that want people to forget what they did during COVID. So. Okay, what's next? Where are things going now?
Well, I think just the thing to do is if you're shopping, just keep focusing on affordability. How do you keep houses affordable? The inventory is starting to come online. How do you stay affordable? How do you keep things affordable? How do you work with somebody that shows you how to make things affordable? Kind of keep the interest rate picture out of your mind, but work with somebody who in the short term knows how to take advantage of a good rate when it's there. Like right now, trying to lock my clients moving into the jobs report. I've got some risk takers that aren't closing for 60 to 90 days. They might wait to see if rates do go down after that. But work with somebody who understands how to maybe take advantage of that, when to wait, when to pull the trigger, but mostly focusing on, are you in your comfort zone? How do I afford it? How do I keep that payment where I can handle it? Because in the long run, the home ownership is going to pay off for your wealth building strategy in the future.
Okay, if you're going to look into the crystal ball and go 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, a year out, and we've done this in the past, and you've been pretty accurate, what would the short-term, mid-term, long-term take be right now?
I would look for less interest cuts from the Fed. I would look for interest rates to stay closer to 7 through the end of the year. I wouldn't look for any big change. I wouldn't look for any big change until you start getting towards the end of 2024, 2025, and you see inflation more under control and a reversal in the jobs reports. And I don't see any of that coming until closer to the end of the year or 2025.
Okay, the other side of that then is you're seeing housing values on the rise. And this is a national trend. We're seeing it here. We've always been a little bit ahead here as well in the Bismarck Mandan area. How does that play into what consumers need to be looking for? Because again,
that's why
inventory
you don't wait on the interest rates.
That's that part of the equation.
Because housing, whatever you think you're going to save an interest rate, you're just going to pay in more expensive housing as time goes on. And if interest rates do go down on you, you're going to really get kicked in the teeth with house prices with multiple offers.
Okay, and at the end of the day, the goal is when it's right for you, be ready and get into the house that you want or you need because, again, you're going to have multiple offers you're fighting. You're going to have there's a lot of working pieces, and we've talked about that in the past, but you need to be in the position to be able to move when you're ready to move.
Yep, exactly right. Exactly right.
Team Joe Sheehan, give him a call. He is your mortgage planner, 701-400-3926. This is Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270.
Hey guys, time to get in on the action for the biggest moments in basketball with Prize Picks, America's #1 fantasy sports app. Just select 2 or more players. Pick more or less on their projections, place your entry, and win up to 100 times your money. Right now, Prize Picks will match your first deposit of up to $100. Just download the Prize Picks app and use the code GET100. That's code GET100 on Prize Picks for a first deposit match of up to $100. Prize Picks. Pick more. Pick less. It's that easy.
To Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270.
Super Talk 1270, I'm Steve Bakken, and this is Talk of the Town. And one of the talks around town, Gaia Home. If you're not familiar with it, I'm going to introduce you to you again. Kylie Harmon, Executive Director for Gaia Home, joining us. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you so much for having me. I really do appreciate it.
So, big news. You officially have a home now.
Yes, Gaia Home has its home. We have acquired 8.93 beautiful acres up in the Silver Ranch 4th edition. So excited. It's just the beautiful space that will allow us to build out our neighborhood, that will provide a new option that currently doesn't exist for the state in end-of-life care.
You know, the key in that statement is the neighborhood and that community, that micro community that you're building. And we're going to get into the details of that. But talk a little bit about the land acquisition. A lot of great community partners, foundational partners. Lot came into, you know what, this is a great mission. Let's try to help this.
Exactly. So Chad Wachter, the developer for the Silver Ranch area, he has just been tremendously involved with Gaia Home since really its inception back in 2019, when it was just starting to be an idea with an advisory group of people. And him, along with Jeff Ubel and Ubel Design Group, and helping us throughout the different iterations as to how the neighborhood could expand and look so that we could find the right location. And then along with Swenson Hagen as well. So it's those three together really helped us put together beautiful lots, an idea as to how Gaia Home could build out through all of its 3 phases, helped us through the platting process and the zoning process, and we officially acquired our land, and so excited now, because that's really going to help us as we continue to go forward through our fundraising activities so that we can eventually break ground and start offering this service.
So you've been fundraising. That's part of being able to acquire the land as well. So whether it's banking partners or, you know, some foundational grants came into play here as well.
Yes. So we were so fortunate. Last year, the Tom and Frances Leach Foundation did award Gaia Home a $250,000 grant. And my understanding is there were 2 $250,000 grants during last year's grant funding cycle, and we were one of the recipients. And we were incredibly excited about that because you can go anywhere in central, western North Dakota and pick out the different areas that have been helped by the Leach Foundation. They have really helped build up many different
and they're very
communities.
Discerning.
Yeah, they take their time. They take their time,
go through the process, and make sure that it's the right project for the right reason.
Exactly.
And if you have a project that they get behind, you know you have a good project.
Exactly, and that was one of the reasons why we were so excited to receive it, because it really puts a feather in our cap. Because when people see that, exactly,
it's a stamp of approval.
Exactly, that's exactly right.
So you got that grant. You've got the land now. A lot of great community partners. From the fundraising perspective, what's next? Because you mentioned the 3 phases. Land acquisition is part of phase 1.
Well, part of phase 1, yep. So phase 1 for Gaia Home is building 6 residential units, homes that families can move into to receive hospice services and just have 24-hour end-of-life care there. So really then the families don't have to take on the caregiver role. They can just be family during that time. So,
and this is that 24/7 care.
24/7 care with a very high hands, high touch. Many caregivers to too few patients. So just very high hands, high touch. And so Phase 1 is the 6 residential units with a community building. Phase 2 could be an addition to the main building that has more suites. So for maybe people who don't need a full 1,400 square foot home, they could have the services in more of a suite-like setting. And then phase 3 could potentially be more residential units. And so right now we are in the process of a $12 million fundraising campaign. Through the end of last year, we had secured $6.65 million halfway there in pledges and commitments. And that's why so excited about the land, because we've been visiting with people, and the one question you always get is, where's it going to be? And now we can officially say Gaia Home has found its home in the Silver Ranch 4th edition.
And once you get the land, that's another step. So, fundraising's hard. And I've worked in that space a lot myself for different projects. Fundraising is difficult. When you have something tangible, fundraising gets a little easier.
And that's exactly...
And the land is now tangible.
Exactly. And that's why we're really excited, because this year, our hope is that we would be able to raise another 4.2 to 5.3 before breaking ground. And so if we could raise 4.2 this year, that really would put us in that position to potentially break ground this coming spring 2025 or summer of 2025, so we could be operational with the first phase by 2026 and really start helping families who currently don't have a homey option when in-home hospice care can't work for them.
What scenarios are those? Actually, let's get back to that in the next segment. But from the fundraising, so what do you need now? Just to finish up the fundraising side of it. So you're looking at about $6 million. You want to get 4 this year. What's the timeline for the fundraising and then actually getting a shovel in the ground?
We would love to have another $4.2 million by the end of this year, so then we can be putting shovel in the ground in 2025.
So next spring.
So next spring, next summer. And again, that's why if people really support this project and want to see it come to fruition, I would say please reach out, look at our website at thegaiahome.org and look at our wonderful group of leadership that we have. There is such a huge cross segment between Bismarck, Mandan, and quite frankly, the state of North Dakota to help us get this option going. And reach out to those individuals to say, hey, I would like to help make a gift. I would like to see this come to fruition. Reach out to me, Kylie Harmon, because if we could raise that 4.2 by the end of this year, we could potentially really break ground next fall or next year.
So one of the things, too, like I said, the tangible side of things. And one of the great ways to do that is taking a look at the pictures and seeing what the design looks like. You've got that now up on the website.
We do. Our website just went through an update, and you can go on there and you can see what Gaia Home could potentially be when it's fully built out in all 3 phases. And so it will really just be a beautiful place that provides peace and tranquility for the families as they're going through that end-of-life journey with a loved one.
So talk about choosing the land and getting that land piece, because we mentioned building that community that the Gaia Home concept is going to wind up being with the 3 phases and building out. It's a little micro community. Having that fit into what is going to be a community in Silver Ranch, rather important.
Very much so. I mean, the Silver Ranch area is just absolutely beautiful. It has so many homes right now. There's a beautiful Silver Ranch Elementary School up there. There's gorgeous parks, and that whole area that is part of Silver Ranch 3rd will connect and flow up into the Silver Ranch 4th edition. So when you see the Gaia Home on the website and what it could potentially look like, you'll see that there's a big green space to the right of Gaia Home, and that's just going to be another empty space for families to walk through. Just south of that will be a pond area, and there's going to be a walking path that's going through the area, so it just really helps. It's connected to what is already a beautiful neighborhood, and then we're providing, like you said, a little sub-community within there that's dedicated to the end of life.
When we come back from the break, I want to talk about the mission of Gaia Home and how it fits into the fabric of healthcare and end-of-life healthcare. This is Talk of the Town. I'm Steve Bakken along with Kylie Harmon from Gaia Home. Once again, the website?
thegaiahome.org.
And it's GAIA.
Yes.
This is Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270.
Hey guys, time to get in on the action for the biggest moments in basketball with Prize Picks, America's #1 fantasy sports app. Just select 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projections, place your entry, and win up to 100 times your money. Right now, Prize Picks will match your first deposit of up to $100. Just download the Prize Picks app and use the code GET100. That's code GET100 on Prize Picks for a first deposit match of up to $100. Prize Picks. Pick more. Pick less. It's that easy.
1270.
Welcome back to Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270.
Super Talk 1270, you're tuned to Talk of the Town. I'm Steve Bakken along with Kylie Harmon, Executive Director with Gaia Home. And I want to talk a little bit about the mission and the mission for Gaia Home. And so a lot of your conversations go back to 2019. This was kind of a thought process for you before that. You really were like, because you were in the healthcare, you worked with the CHI Foundation, and you were like, something's missing.
Yeah, so this really, the conversation really does go back to about 2013 when at that time, like you said, I was at St. Alexis. I was running the foundation there, and Gary Miller, the CEO, said we need to look at doing a place like this. And there was a small group of us, myself, Julie Jeske, and Tammy Thayer, who was the hospice director at St. A's, started to research what are these facilities, what do the operational models look like, and how do you get that going? At that time, I went to Terry Rockstead because I knew he was very, very passionate about end-of-life care, and he was the former owner of all the Dan's supermarkets, which are now Family Fare. And he said, I'm all in with what you guys need. It just didn't come to fruition at that time, but it was a conversation that continued to happen throughout the years. And then in 2020, 2019, a lot of research was done, and an advisory group of people came together of Chad Wachter, Terry Rockstead, Denise Cambites, RJ Pathroff, and Sue Ann Olson. We all came together and really said, how do we do this? What do we do? What are the steps we need to take to get this going?
Well, and it clicked with me because I was going through this with my father passing away, and it was in a position where hospice didn't, because it's not that 24-hour care, and his wife couldn't manage him at home anymore, but really wasn't a candidate for a nursing home. There were people that fall in the crack. Now, Washington State had a mechanism in place for that type of care. That was where you and I had that really got into this conversation. I'm like,
back in 2020.
There's a model.
Yep.
Here's this. How do I help? And I'm all in because I went through it. And there's a lot of people that go through this.
Yes. Very, very much so. Right now for people when in-home hospice care isn't an option, at this point in time, there is not a place in North Dakota that's dedicated to end-of-life care in a real homey setting, and that's the gap we will fill.
Well, because the end-of-life care, you want somebody in that comfort, that home setting.
Yep.
That's why hospice exists, but hospice doesn't provide the 24-hour care. That's not their mission. They do a great job. They do an incredible mission, but there's a gap between that and then if somebody has to go into a nursing home for their end of life, which is now you're in that anesthetic hospital type setting, which isn't that home
homey feeling. And so that's why.
So there's a gap.
There's a gap.
Where this service ends and that service begins, there's a void. And that's the space Gaia Home is looking to fill. And
that's exactly right. So for people who cannot put together the 24-hour care that's required for their loved one to be on hospice, if it's just too hard for them to provide that care, if they live outside of a hospice service area. There are 28 counties in western North Dakota, and I believe 4 of them have currently no hospice services. For people who, most people will want to start hospice in their home, but it gets to a point where the disease progression is just too difficult for the family to provide the care. And then there are people who just do not want to have that final passage in their home because it can be too traumatic for the family members who still have to live there. And so that's where Gaia Home will come in and fill that void so families can move into the residential units. Their loved one can receive the 24-hour dedicated hospice end-of-life care with wonderful staff that's their heart and soul, what they do. And then the families, they can just be family with their loved one during that final time, really focus on making lasting memories versus dealing with the difficult caretaking tasks.
You know, I know where I came into this picture and how this has progressed from, because you filled me in a lot of it, but go back to 2013 when you were first having those conversations. And did you think that where you're at personally with your involvement of this, did you ever have any thought that that's my life mission? That is my passion.
Yeah.
And because the big thing is when you get passionate about something, you're able to follow your passion, you have better outcomes. There's just something about a project that if it's a passion rather than, hey, I'm just doing a job.
Yeah.
And I've watched you grow into this space. And it's been amazing to watch, and thank you so much for what you do. But did you ever envision that's where you'd wind up, or this is where you were going, and it's your life mission, it's your passion?
You know, along the way, there's definitely all of those God moments that as time progresses, you reflect on. And when 2013 first, what is this, and starting to look and understanding it really helped connect me back to the hospice experience that I always go back to, which was with my grandfather. I was 9 at the time, and we lived at the Grand Forks Air Force Base. My grandma and grandpa were in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and I could just see on my mom how hard it was for her to not be able to be there all the time helping my grandmother with my grandfather's care. And I didn't understand it at the time because I was, 9. I didn't know what this all meant. And then she was able to be there that last week of care. And
you may have not understood it, but it stuck with you.
Oh, it stuck with me because I'll never forget then too, walking into the home right before my grandfather passed, and his hospital bed was in his den. And the den is where he always watched his Western movies, and he would always sleep on the floor. For whatever reason, he didn't sleep in a bed. He liked to sleep on a floor.
Well, it's part of the Western theme.
Exactly. He would roll out a foam mattress and sleep on the floor. And when I first walked in, there was that white bed, and he was a ghost. And that stuck with me. And then seeing my mom and my grandma and the relief that was on their face, because that hard part was done with the care, and they knew he was in a better place. But it was just, I don't know how, but it stuck with me. And then being an only child and forecasting into the future, what is that going to be like when it's my parents? I don't have the ability to provide the care. That's just not me. I want to be their daughter at that time. And so that's why this is so important, because that's just one story, and there are so many people that can share that story, or they have their own story as to how Gaia Home could really help them have a better end of life journey where they can just be the family.
Yeah. And it's kind of like going back to think about the cancer center and how many people have been affected by cancer or know somebody, whether directly, indirectly, somebody. Same story. And that's why the mission of Gaia Home is so important, because I don't know anybody that either has not, will not, gone through that same scenario in some capacity. It's inevitable.
It's inevitable, and it's a conversation people don't like to talk about, but Gaia Home will be that beacon that will help drive forth that end-of-life conversation to help people have more options, more information, more choices, so that they can choose the best option for them.
Kylie Harmon, Executive Director with Gaia Home, you keep up the good work.
Thank you.
And every step of the way, keep our listeners informed of what's going on, because it's getting exciting.
It is. It's getting exciting. We're getting closer.
Spring of 25.
We're getting close.
Looking forward to that date. Once again, what's the website if people want to go take a look and or donate or get involved in some capacity?
Yep, it's thegaiahome.org, and that's GAIA. So thegaiahome.org. And if you would like to make a donation, please reach out to me or one of our Gaia Home leadership members. We will be more than happy to assist you.
You're tuned to Talk of the Town. This is Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270.
Just what the doctor ordered. I'm Daria Albinger with today's tax tip. Are you sick over what you had to pay in medical bills last year? You may be able to write some of them off.
So assuming that the taxpayer is able to itemize deductions using Schedule A, then they have a second hurdle to go through. And that is those medical expenses must exceed 7.5% of their adjusted gross income.
But accountant Janice Heyman says they do not include your copays.
Sometimes I see taxpayers including a pre-tax health insurance expense. They see it as an expense to them because it's coming out of their paycheck. That is a pre-tax deduction and not eligible for a medical write-off on their personal tax return.
Learn about what medical expenses are covered and what are not on the IRS website at irs.gov. With today's tax tip, Daria Albinger, ABC News.
This is the Pet Minute. I'm Steve Dale with animal news from around the world. Next, Beringer Ingelheim Animal Health wants you to know that your dog can be at risk of heart disease. By screening for a heart murmur, abnormal heart rhythm, or heart enlargement, your veterinarian will be able to diagnose and possibly treat these signs earlier. There are medications that can help delay the onset of congestive heart failure or manage the symptoms of heart failure once diagnosed. Talk with your veterinarian to see if your dog is at risk and schedule that ever-important annual exam. Early detection is best. Why did the squirrel cross the road? To get nuts, hazelnuts in particular. The problem is that red squirrels were being killed in England by speeding traffic on the road. There's no crosswalk for squirrels. Instead, a rope bridge was constructed. Instantly, the squirrels figured it out and began to use it. This is a real example of how simple it can be to help urban wildlife. For the Pet Minute, I'm Steve Dale.
Talk of the Town, weekday mornings starting at 9 on Super Talk 1270 and the free Super Talk 1270 mobile app.
KLXX Mandan Bismarck, a town square media station, broadcasting from the View Community Credit Union studio.
Hey guys, time to get in on the action for the biggest moments in basketball with Prize Picks, America's #1 fantasy sports app. Just select 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projections, place your entry, and win up to 100 times your money. Right now, Prize Picks will match your first deposit of up to $100. Just download the Prize Picks app and use the code GET100. That's code GET100 on Prize Picks for a first deposit match of up to $100. Prize Picks. Pick more. Pick less. It's that easy.